Hi, hi everyone. This is Najaf Syed, and today I'm going to discuss about the flash recovery area. This is one of the features added in Oracle database. Start from 10G, and I'll talk about the 19C. So over the period of time, there are some enhancement and features added into this one. It itself is a feature which was added from 10G database onwards, and after the addition of this feature, DBA's life become very easy. Managing the backups, managing the recovery parts of files into the database becomes very easier for DBA or a database administrator who are managing the database, the Oracle database basically. So I will cover few of the insights and few of the importance of the flash recovery area and how we are managing and what are all things we need to consider and we need to take care if we are into the Oracle database and if we are supposed to manage the database. So let's begin with the introduction so that I can walk you through the important aspects of the flash recovery area. So the agenda of this session is we will understand what is the FRA, and if we are in the database track, then it's our day-to-day activities to manage the FRA alerts. So we will discuss the if we get some sort of alerts with regards to the FRA, how we can handle, and in the same line we will also talk about some part of the the archivelogs related file systems. So that is also one of the important file system related alerts that is also part of the FRA, because sometimes we are also using that as a part of the FRA. So we'll discuss all these 3 points, and majorly these are the 3 categories we will discuss. But let's begin with the introduction of the FRA. So this session is the continuation of the database administration track, which we have already talked about. Start from the architecture level until now we have covered so many things, and this session this is one of the important session, I would say, in continuation with we already discussed, and we'll talk about, as I said, that we'll discuss more on the inside and how we can manage the FRA. So let's begin with the actual introduction. What exactly FRA is? In the Oracle database, the flash recovery area is the location where actual Oracle manage the recovery related information and the backup related information and backup related logs, basically not the information, we can say the physical files about the database backup, flashback logs, archive logs, and there are some foreign archive logs, control file, all the basically in short, if I'll summarize the total types of files being kept into the FRA is the related to backup and recovery. Since if we are dealing and we are in the database track, the backup and recovery is one of the important aspects and one of the important area for a DBA to take care. If you are in the database DBA track, then you should be comfortable and you should be able to do the backup and recovery. Without the backup and recovery, no one can exist, because at certain point in time database may fail, and as a DBA, as a good DBA, we should be able to deal with this situation where the database got failed, and we should be able to roll back, flashback, restore the database as and when needs arise. So that is also one of the important area, the FRA, where we are discussing that how the backups are being managed, how the database archive logs is being managed, and how we are managing the recovery related information into the database. So this is one of the very very important area of the Oracle, and Oracle has simplifies this one as a part of the FRA, and it helps the DBA to manage the files very easily. So let's begin with one of the example. I'll take the this slides represent the recovery window and retention. Before starting with the FRA discussion, actual FRA discussion, we should understand that what are all types of backup we should keep, what are all things we can store into the FRA, and we also need to understand that how long we are going to keep the backup on disk, because FRA is used to configure on the disk, and we should at the same time need to understand and ask the business, and we need to understand if we are getting to the new environment. Say for example, if we got onboarded to one of the project, we need to understand the how long we are supposed to keep the backup on disk, because FRA will not be able to, we will not be able to configure the FRA on the tape drive. So some location, something on the drive or something on the disk level, you need to configure the FRA. So we need to understand the time, how long we are going to keep the backup, and what is the size of the backup, what is the size of Archivelogs. And say for example, if we'll talk about the flashback, we'll discuss what is flashback. But if we are going to hold the flashback, so we also need to understand the how the flashback is being used, whether we are using the normal flashback or we are creating the guaranteed flashback. We will cover these two topics in details in this slide, in this session. But we also need to understand the same, as I mentioned, that the flash, how we are going to manage the database flashback, and as I mentioned that the Archivelogs, how many days of Archivelogs we are going to retain on the disk. This is main 3 points we need to consider. In keeping in mind, we can design and we can decide the size of the FRA and the location and disk of the FRA. So basically, as I mentioned at the initial, that the FRA is configured on some location, some disk. Earlier, when FRA was not come into the picture, we as a DBA used to manage all the backup, Archivelog, flashback log, all the recovery, backup and recovery related file system on different file systems, and that was the manual intervention and all DBA used to deal with. But after existence of the FRA, we DBA got the features Oracle internally managed. So what we DBA has to give the information to the Oracle internal job will take care of all this. So we need to specify the destination of FRA. There will be one location and it will manage internally all the types of files in different folders. Oracle automatically create the different folders for the backup, for the Archivelogs, for the flashback log, as soon as we provided the one location. That in this example, if you see here, in this example you will see the flash recovery file size, the destination is Rico, right? So plus Rico is one of the ASM disk group on which FRA is configured. And if here you will see the example, the size of this FRA is defined as 2300 GB. So 2.3 terabyte we can say. So this is the size of the FRA and this is the destination of the. As a DBA, we only need to provide this one in order to configure the FRA. Once this is done, and if you have specified the DB use file dist on the FRA location, all the Archivelogs get generated and recorded into the FRA, and all the backups related information will be kept into the FRA. So this is one of the settings we as a DBA need to take care. Apart from that, we will be managing. How we will managing? Let's see the example. So if we'll talk about this slide, how the FRA is being calculated. This is one of the most important, the picture, or I can say the output of the query, which I'll talk about here in this example. As I told that many types of files is being stored into the FRA. So here, if you see here, the Archivelogs and the auxiliary database copy and the backup pieces, control file, flashback logs, image copy, and foreign Archivelogs, and so many. There are few more around 7 to 8 total types of files are being stored into the FRA. And here, if you see the total percentage used, so it will give the information about the how much percentage of the particular files being occupied in the FRA, how the FRA is being populated. So if the third column, if you see the available, the percentage of reclaimable space into the FRA, and the fourth is number of files with respect to the particular types of file. It will list out the complete number of count of the files, and the con ID is something that which container of the. This is a multi-tenant. This output was captured for the multi-tenant. So we'll cover the multi-tenant at later stage. So we'll skip the last column as of now. So how I have calculated here, if I give you the example, first of all, let me add two things. One is the views, database views. The $V recovery area usage is one of the views, and $V recovery file dist is another view. After querying these two, we will get this output. Okay, and if you calculate, if you try to understand the utilization of the FRA, since I mentioned that the FRA is being used for different file types of saving the different types of file. So here the calculation part is, if you see the percentage space used, the 61.57% is utilized by the archivelogs, and the 18.08% is being used by the flashback log. So altogether, if you calculate, the 79.77% is used. This is the percentage out of 100. So out of 100, 79.77% is already occupied and utilized by the FRA. So since we have allocated 2300 GB of the size gigabyte, and out of which 79% is used, so how much is remaining? So we can calculate that after subtracting from this this one, the 100%. So altogether it will be around 21%, right? 20% something, 20.33% should be. So in this example, this column says the total utilization of the FRA, but the main important point here to note that whatever the percentage is reported here, the reclaimable is something marked for the delete. As soon as there is a pressure on the FRA, Oracle internally delete these jobs. So as I said, the DBA's lives become easier, because earlier DBA used to manage all these files, DBA used to delete all these files, DBA used to perform the housekeeping and backup and all these. If we consider the example of the 7 to 8 files here, 7 to 8 types of files, DBA used to manage all sort of information, all sort of files separately on the separate file systems. So in this example, all this file is being managed through the one command, that is the FRA dest. We have just set the FRA dest. All the files, different file is being managed by the Oracle internal job. We have set the size. So all the sizing of the FRA is being managed internally. Whatever the files is being utilized by some other files, it is just reporting that this archivelogs is used by 61%. So out of 100%, archivelogs has consumed 61%. And out of 100%, 80% of the utilization is consumed by the flashback log. So altogether 79. But the point which I was discussing here is this percentage of reclaimable. Here the reclaimable of the archivelogs is 61%. Why I said the reclaimable? Reclaimable is something which has already marked for the delete, but it is still showing. Why it is not deleted? The question is why it is not deleted. The answer for this question is, as soon as the FRA utilization cross 80%, Oracle internal background process start deleting the FRA and deleting the FRA files which are marked for the reclaimable. If we have something for reclaimable, Oracle internally delete all this file as soon as the FRA total utilization cross 80% as per the design. So same I have mentioned here. If you see this slide, I have documented these things, that as soon as the FRA uses become 80%, the FRA, see, this is done when the usage of the FRA is about 80% of the defined size. And as I said that the DB recovery file dest is a size, we have set 2300 GB, right? So if the size of the FRA, so for example 2300 GB we have specified, but out of which if 80% is utilized, it will start purging, it will start deleting the files from the FRA which are marked for the reclaimable. In this example, the 61% of the archivelogs marked for the reclaimable and marked for the delete, it will be deleted. But at the same time, if you consider the other example, the flashback log, the 18% of the flashback log are there, but that are not marked for the delete. So the flashback log will not be deleted. Okay, so let's understand in detail. As I said that the 80% of the if it cross 80%, the files will get deleted. But as we also need to consider at the same time, if the utilization cross 80%, and in case we as a DBA got any sort of alert stating that the FRA usage is, say for example, 85%. As I mentioned that the FRA, Oracle internally deletes the files of the FRA as soon as it touches the 80%. But you may experience if you're working the real life example, if you are in the DBA track, you may experience the utilization of FRA is 80%, more than 80%, 85%, 90%. In such situation, that is the alarming for the DBA that the Oracle internally unable to delete the files from the FRA. There could be number of reasons. I'll talk about what are all the reasons, what could be the reason, and how we can deal in case, because if Oracle is internally unable to delete those files, so we as a DBA need to look into it. We need to analyze the situation, how that is happening, because as per the design, Oracle should delete it. But the Oracle, as I mentioned, the Oracle will delete only the files which are marked for the reclaimable. But why the files is not being reclaimable? If the file is not being reclaimable, then that will not mark for the delete, and that will not be deleted. So keeping that point in mind, that reclaimable and not non-reclaimable, I have also captured one screenshot from the database that the percentage space not reclaimable. In this example, if you see, I can share all these queries and will prepare the document. I'll share and upload so that it will be handy reference for all the DBAs who are supposed to manage the FRA. So if the percentage reclaimable is 17%, okay, so these percentage cannot be reclaimed. Otherwise, the FRA, so for example, if utilization is 79%, but keeping aside the 17%, the other part of the FRA can be reclaimed. So we not need to worry about what is the size of FRA. I mean, how the Oracle will manage. So there are the good amount of space which are marked for the reclaimable. So FRA will delete it. Okay. So considering that the other scenarios, say for example, the reclaimable is 0 and FRA usage is 80%. The reclaimable, I cannot see any file into the reclaimable area, but the FRA uses 80%, and we are coming into the situation where the archivelogs is not, or the files belongs to the FRA is not being deleted just because those are not reporting into the reclaimable area. So that is a matter of concern. Correct. So considering that, as an immediate solution from as a DBA point of view, because we as a DBA need to maintain the availability of the database. And if you know the functionality of the FRA and the archivelog, if destination of the archivelogs or destination of the FRA is 100% exhausted, it will create the outage. Database functionality will halt. It won't create any further archivelogs. It won't switch the database log. It will halt the database operation, and there will be outage. If we are into the production environment, we should be very careful and we should avoid any sort of outage into the database. So that is the reason we are the administrator, right? We are managing the database in order to avoid any sort of outage and escalation. Correct. So if you are with me, then what I will suggest here to increase the size of the FRA immediately. If you have set the 2300 GB, if it is crossed, say for example 90%, and there are nothing in the reclaimable area, the first option and the first action as a DBA would be to increase the size. This is the command we can use to increase the size. See, here it was 2300, we can extend it to 3500 GB, but we cannot go blindly to extend, right? If we extend, say for example, the record disk group size is only 300 GB. If we are increasing it to 35, this command will execute it. But at the end, in the background, the size of the record disk group is only 300 GB. However, we are just extending to 35. It is a logical setting. It will logically allocate 3500 GB. But if it is going to utilize the 300 GB, it won't. Because the size of the FRA, the disk group record disk group was only 300 GB. So keeping that in mind, if that is some situation, if you are going to increase the size of FRA, you also have to check this destination size, whether we have the sufficient space on the destination or not. Okay, if we have the sufficient space on the destination, you can go and extend the size, and this is a command to extend the size. But in case we don't have the space on the FRA location, the record destination, the record disk group, we can explore the option on the other disk group if we have the sufficient space on the other. In this example, I have just documented that the data 01, the other disk group, that is belongs to the data file. But if situation is tough and we don't have the space on the reco, at that time we need to change the destination of the FRA just to make the database available. We can later troubleshoot and try to remove, not the manually, we will try to take the backup of the archive logs or whatever the files we'll try to make them reclaimable. Until then, as a temporary workaround, we should change the destination of the FRA. If the FRA utilization, the destination of the FRA becomes close to 100% or something, that the situation can be worse. So these two, the settings we can consider as an immediate workaround. But very important point here, note that as soon as we increase the size and we change the destination, we as a DBA need to revert these changes as soon as the situation becomes normal. So as soon as the situation becomes normal, we need to just revert whatever the changes we have done. Because I'll give you an example here. So for example, we have 3 databases, okay, and we have the 60 GB of the record disk group. This is just a dummy example. Consider if we have the only 60 GB of reco and we have the 3 database all together configured for this on the same disk group, the reco, and all 3 database, say for example, assigned for 20 GB, right? So but all 3 databases haven't used that 20 GB. They are, say for example, one database is only 5 GB is using, another database is using only 10 GB, consider, okay. Out of 60 GB, 15 GB is used by 2 databases, but they are allocated to use 20 GB altogether. Okay, both are 20. It means the 40 GB is marked to allocate. They are allowed to use 20 GB. So out of 60, they are allowed to use this 40 GB out of 20, out of 60. So say for example, if we are dealing with a database where we are facing the issue and the FRA is getting 100%, so we can extend the size, since considering that the other database has used only 10 and plus 5, 15 GB. Rest of the space are available on the record disk group. So we can temporarily extend the size of this group, whatever database we are dealing, ABC, say for example, we can increase the size to, say for example, 40 GB even, because the space is available. From 20 GB to 40 GB we can extend as a temporary, but we cannot make it permanent because 2020 is already allocated to someone else, some other database, right? So we have to keep in mind that the other database are also using the same disk group. So as soon as our temporary workaround worked and we come out of this situation and the situation become normal, so we have to adjust our settings to the previous, because these settings are something we are, as a DBA, we are specifying based on the calculation of the FRA allocation in different databases. If we are working in the multi customer environment, so we as a DBA used to face this kind of issue. If you are working in a single database, then no need to worry. Whatever the size of the destination, you can completely allocate to the FRA. It's your call. I'm just giving the example of the environment where we have the multiple databases on the same host and sharing the same destination, same FRA destination, the multiple databases. So this was the other point. And if I'll proceed further, I'll give some example that how the files are being marked as a absolute. That is one of the important point to note here. Here in this example, we have considered the Archivelog as an example, that how the Archivelogs will be marked for the absolute, how this file will be marked for the delete. So this is one of the important 3 parameters I used here. What I use here is the Archivelogs deletion policy to back up 2 times on disk. Say for example, if the backup of the Archivelogs we have taken 2 times on disk, whatever the Archivelogs which got backed up 2 times on disk will be marked for the absolute. It will be marked for the absolute, and it can be deleted as soon as there is a operation of FRA. Oracle automatically delete. In case the other example here is, in case the deletion policy says the shift to all standby, in case the Archivelogs got successfully shipped to the associated standby, it will mark for the deletion. It will mark for the reclaimable. At the same time, the third example says that it will, a policy to apply it on all the standby. It will wait for apply on the all the standby. So there are certain other parameters, but I use the three parameters, three settings, just to give you idea that how the archivelogs is being marked for the deletion or absolute, or we can say mark for the reclaimable. Okay, if either of the policy gets satisfied, I mean, what are the policy we have set for the reclaimable or the absolute, or we can say the delete, that should satisfy before it comes into the reclaimable area. If policy of the deletion will not satisfy, that will not report into the reclaimable. That is one of the important points. In case why it will not, say for example, consider the first one. We have mentioned the backup 2 times on disk. Say for example, one time backup was successful, but the other backup was failed. So at the Oracle level, there is only one backup of the archivelogs. The other backup was failed. So that is the reason the archivelogs was not marked for the reclaimable. So as a DBA, we need to investigate that why the backup was failed. If we ran the same backup, it will be marked for the deletion. So we have to review the situation. Depending on the situation, we can take the call. Consider, for example, if we'll consider the last one, the applied on all the standby. If one of the standby is down, so for example, we have only one standby for one primary. If one of the standby is down, the archivelogs will not be applied on the standby. Correct. In that situation, what will happen? The archivelogs will not delete from the primary side, and it will become overburden. It will not mark for the reclaimable. So we as a DBA need to investigate that why the archivelogs was not applied on the standby. If we come across the standby was down or something, maybe apply was not working on the standby, so we as a DBA need to fix it. If there is a problem, we as a DBA need to fix. But if there are no problem, Oracle internally will be able to manage and will be able to delete it. That is the level of configuration we have, that Oracle will be able to manage, will be able to delete as soon as if we don't have any sort of issues on the configuration, or any failure, or any sort of disruption is not there, then Oracle will be able to manage. Okay, I believe that I have given some sort of the deletion related information so far. At the same time, let's focus on the flashback. And before proceeding with the flashback, let me give you a few examples that if you are interested how the archivelogs is being created, and how we can summarize that, whether the archivelogs is applied or not, whether archivelogs is deleted or not, whether it is marked for the expired or not. So we have the view the v$archive_log and gv$archive_. If you query these two, I will give this query. If you query these two view, you will get to know the output of this one. And here the status column DDD, it was deleted. It was already the archival date and the destination where it was stored, and the total number of files and GB total. This is the information you will get. And here if you see the available means it's available. It was not marked for the delete, even if it was not for marked for the expire. Not is the absolute one. So here are the list of status. A stands for the available, D stands for the delete, and R stand for the retired something. So there are some certain status of the several files. So this is something extra I have added, just to if you are interested, you can explore whether that archivelogs were expired or not. So let's move to some other area, that the flash, as I talk about the flashback related files. And I am considering that you are aware what is flashback log. Since archivelogs is something, as a DBA, if you don't know, this course is not for you. If you know the basic understanding, if you have the basic understanding for the Oracle database, then this course was for you, because at the end, if you know the importance of the archivelogs, then that was the fruitful for you, that how we are managing and how we can manage the archivelogs, how we can handle into the FRA. But at the same time, if if I start with the flashback file, if you don't understand what is flashback, so you need to attend my separate sessions to understand that, because I have taken the separate sessions for the flashback, just to understand what is it and how we are managing, what is the use of the flashback. So keeping aside the use and the importance of here I'll just try to demonstrate, I'll just try to give some idea about the how the flashback logs is being managed into the FRA. Okay, so without spending time on the explaining the what is the flashback, I have already, since I have mentioned that I have already taken the session on the flashback, so I'll refer that session link into the the link in this session. I mean this session. So let's proceed with the discussion flashback logs. So here before understanding the flashback, we need to understand the types of flashback. Basically, one is the non-guaranteed and the another one is guaranteed. If the retention, if you see the retention target, if you see the retention is 1440, it means the retention of the flashback is 1 day, right? 1440. If you divide by the 60 and 24, I mean, because this is something that this is in minute, right? If you divide the minutes, if you convert the minute into the day, the 1440 in 1 day, we have 1440 minutes. So you have to calculate this one. I have just calculated for you that the 1440 minutes means 1 day. So we have the retention of the FRA is 1 day. Post that, whatever the flashback log was generated will mark into the retention automatically. So if the retention gets satisfied, okay, so if we have the more than one of the one day of the flashback logs, it will come into the reclaimable area. Here in this example, if you see the 1440 is the minutes to keep the flashback logs on the FRA, but here we have kept the 15212, even more than that. Why so? Because this is just because the FRA was not under pressure. We can have more than one, but this one gets deleted as soon as there is a pressure, because it will satisfy this one and the remaining will be deleted. Here I have calculated the percentage of use or the percentage of reclaimable. So here if you calculate the use percentage is 6% out of the allocated FRA, and here the percentage we can reclaim, I mean the Oracle internally can reclaim as soon as the housekeeping jobs initiated internally, it will delete 1.15%, 1.55%. Okay, so this one of the example that the percentage of archivelogs flashback logs get deleted as soon as there is a pressure. So before proceeding with the further slides, one more important point here is, if we have the guaranteed restore point created, it will override. Guaranteed restore point will not focus or will not consider the retention target. It will override the retention target, and it will keep the flashback logs required for the guaranteed restore point, guaranteed flashback basically. So those flashback logs will be override, and it will be kept into the FRA as long as we are dropping the guaranteed restore point. So as a DBA in our day-to-day life, if we created the guaranteed restore point, it's our core job to drop it as soon as possible, because whatever the logs will be generated will not be deleted, will not come into the reclaimable area. That will not be marked for the deletion. So as a DBA, we have to deal with and we have to take care of this one. And what is GRP? What is guaranteed restore point? That is something that is giving the guarantee to flash back the database when we have created, the time we have created, it will flash back the database. So that's giving the guarantee of flashback. So that is the reason we are calling as a guaranteed restore point, right? So in short, we are maintaining as a GRP for that. So if we have the GRP, it will not be deleted, it will not for the mark, flashback logs will not be marked for the deletion. So in such situations, say for example, I'll relate one example here, that in case you come across the situation of the FRA where the utilization of the FRA is very high. So for example, out of 100%, 70% is used by the flashback log. So it is directly or indirectly indicating that the FRA is being used by the flashback, right? It means that there is some guaranteed restore point is created. You have to further dig into it, and you have to find that whether the guaranteed flashback is created or not, guaranteed restore point is created or not. If there is a guaranteed restore point, you have to manage the FRA size, you have to increase the size of the FRA size for time being, and at the same time you can ask the application team or whoever has requested or insisted to create the guaranteed restore point. We can ask whether if it is really required, or we can drop it post the confirmation and post the defined policy and defined process. You can go ahead and drop after taking the confirmation from the customer or whoever has requested to create the GRP. So if you got the confirmation, you can you can drop the GRP. As soon as you drop the GRP, all the files will get automatically deleted. It will not wait for Oracle internal job to delete it. So as a part of the guaranteed restore point, files get deleted as soon as you drop it, but it will not allow Oracle to delete it automatically if you have created the guaranteed restore point. That is the main point to note here. And the guaranteed restore point is something that you have to separately deal with. So that is the need of the DBA to